right, cool. So I'm here with Thomie and his partner Danny, otherwise known as Education, here to talk about their new album, Stroll Along. So I just asked this for you guys, but how are you and are you guys happy? That's a deep kind of question, but I don't know. It's something that I've been asking people lately and just kind of get where you guys are at with how everything's going on and your new release.
Yeah, I feel happy. I just feel like, personally, just feel like as a musician, since we can't play live, I feel like we have to pivot a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So times feel uncertain, but I'm always excited by change. So I feel pretty happy about the situation right now. But I think it's just because I'm an optimist. So I tend to look on the bright side with a lot of things. So it's kind of hard to be sad right now.
Yeah, for sure. And then Danny, what about you?
Yeah, I think I'm on the similar kind of wavelength there. Personally, I think I'm in a good spot. I know there's a lot of darkness out there right now and confusion and stuff of how the world is. But I think it's times like this that allow people like Thomie and myself to kind of grow a little bit more and take a step back and kind of look at the overall picture.
Yeah, for sure.
Keep driving through things, you know?
Yeah, and I have a question that at some point I'm going to get into with like how the album was made, especially within this time. But so during the album and not only working on it, but releasing it, were you guys living close to each other or you were in two separate places?
Yeah, we were living pretty much across the street from each other in Austin.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Yeah, he was living on the other side of the highway, and I make it sound like he's homeless or something.
Yeah, right. He's just like living on the side of the highway.
So you cross like this main highway in Austin, and he was in an apartment on the other side, and I was on the opposite side. And I just kept going to his place because that's where all the equipment is. And I have a tiny setup at my apartment, so I would start an idea at my apartment and then bring it over to his, and pretty much finish up everything over there.
Sweet.
I think the tracking portion, so the recording of the whole record, was completed by the time Thomie left Austin. So
okay.
So after that, anything post-production, so like any type of mixing or mastering, or little parts like that, were done after he was gone. So I was just kind of glad that we got the meat done before he left.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then, because you left, Thomie, when did you leave Austin? Because that was this year.
Yeah, that was end of July.
Yeah, and then you moved to the place that you are right now in San Antonio, correct? Okay. And then, Danny, are you still in Austin, or did you move as well?
Yeah, I'm still there. I'm probably going to be there till next July, and then go back to San Antonio.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this kind of gets into the album, and I want to have you guys like be able to break it down. So coming back to the question that I asked earlier, I had read somewhere that you said that it took over like 3 years to make, and especially with how much the world has changed right now, I can imagine like going through it definitely changed as well. So I want to ask, not only as musicians, but as human beings, how is this album specifically different than Supply? And how would you say yourselves as humans have grown through it?
I mean, ultimately, I feel like we made these albums like in the opposite order because like it seems like the world was seemingly brighter when we made Supply versus Stroll Along now. And I say that because Supply is like a much more down-tempo kind of record. And this time we kind of challenged ourselves as being in a darker time in the world, but trying to make the best of it and making faster and more upbeat songs. So I think that's like the biggest difference between the two albums.
Yeah, and that's what I had been listening to an interview of you kind of mentioning that is how they did have two different sounds to them. And this one was a lot more upbeat. So I guess like correlating that with everything that's going on, like, I mean, you guys must have been closer to the end when all of this kind of started, but how did going through, lockdown and the pandemic kind of affect the project and how you guys worked?
It definitely sped up everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like with our schedules, just in life and, just trying to get the record done in two different places. It takes a long time to kind of coordinate that. So with lockdown and everything, it was actually a good thing for us living so close in Austin that we could get it done even faster. we don't have to go anywhere. We're stuck at home. So instead of, just like sitting down and doing nothing, we figured, we might as well just like lock ourselves in our apartments and just finish this damn record.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, I can imagine like having the time too. For myself, like through quarantine, it was honestly like I had my periods where I wasn't creative, and then I had my periods that it was, and like it's come out at the end that honestly I've enjoyed kind of having the time to myself and focusing on my craft. So with you guys, like, having that time to yourself, how has that affected you guys just personally?
Wait, sorry, you cut out for a second.
Oh, it's all good. No, I was just saying that like, towards the end, like I've loved this time like by myself and focusing on my craft. So with you guys, especially as you like release the album and close to it, how were you as like people, you know what I mean, doing this all?
Yeah, very tired.
Yeah.
I mean, in the position that I'm in, it's not to the point where like you can say that the music situation is like that's your main source of income yet in your future, but having, like you said, that time to like kind of go in, and it's kind of unfortunate for people, but then at the same time, as music producers or mixers or whatever, it's literally the dream because everything just stopped.
Yeah.
So it's like you can do any kind of thing that you wanted to do or any project that you wanted to finish up. It was the time to do it, and so it just was super freeing to go in and complete that. It just felt good.
Yeah, and it's been awesome, like seeing how many artists have released things and also how personal they've been. Like that's a big thing this year that I've noticed is, not only in music, but in a lot of different careers, like people have been really coming out about how personal what they've released is or the process with it and everything. So I guess Danny, and honestly, this is a question for both of you, but on the production side of this, talk me through how you guys kind of found the sound and knew that it's what you wanted for the final project.
Yeah, I think just challenging ourselves with trying to write more up-tempo stuff. That's been something that, we would finish a show, and after a show, we'd talk to each other. We'd go to like a diner that was open like until 2 a.m. and talk to each other about like, hey, how do you think the show went? What do you think could be improved? What's good about it? And we kind of just have like a really like disciplined review meeting kind of after the show. So with that, we would always say like, hey, we need to write like maybe 1 to 2 more upbeat songs. And I feel like the show would be like right there. And with album, it kind of felt like, well, let's challenge ourselves, make as much upbeat stuff as we possibly can.
Yeah, for sure. And then you had mentioned too how, it is different from Supply in the sense that it is more upbeat. What was the decision to kind of go that way? Was it always something that you wanted to do, or was it just kind of happen naturally?
Yeah, it was just like, for some reason, it always came like second nature to me to write slower songs, I guess, because I'm always like the type of person that likes the ballads more on a record, and I'll really, listen to those over and over. So it kind of came like second nature to write songs like that. And I just always have an appreciation for people that could write like more pop driven stuff. And I've always wanted to be like one of those songwriters myself. So I just felt like that's kind of just the logical place to go with this next record.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess same kind of question, but in regards to the songwriting on the album, talk me through that, without giving away too much. What was your writing process like throughout all of this? And in this moment in your life, where did you really pull from?
I think a lot of like guitar bands and stuff, like going back to like the Beatles and stuff like that, and trying to figure out like what are the best parts of that I can pull from without copying them too much, at least. And then a lot of artists like Michael Jackson and Prince that are like always on the front of my mind, that always gonna try to emulate just because it's in like my musical DNA. And then just focusing on writing stuff that's going to feature more guitar. I just feel like I fell in love with guitar all over again. And going back to Supply, that was a very like synth-driven record, and very focusing more on texture than anything. Going into this record, we focused more on the songwriting, focusing more on like more pop arrangements, and just focusing on just like where can we add guitar? Like, is there like any little place that is missing guitar that we could add it?
Yeah. No, I enjoyed that about the album too, because I definitely noticed that difference of like the guitar in this one and the synth in the last one. And no, it's interesting because you talk about Michael Jackson, you talk about these like Prince, and it shows through your work, and I love that. So yeah, I mean, with you guys, Danny especially, you know, how is it working yourself with the production of the album and away from like personal projects for the time?
I think there's always like these short stints of growth periods where, some people have this like niche to kind of stop making stuff and just listen to things for a long time, and that's what I do a lot of times. Is even Thomie sometimes like, why don't you just hit the record button? Because it's like I'm making all this stuff all the time, or like making like little loops or whatever at home. He's like, you never hit record. And that's a big problem I have. I got to take care of that. But I think through right before we were starting to kind of get to the end stages of the album was where I had all of these sounds in my head and all these ideas that I had kind of acquired over time during that period of not really recording or making anything, of just listening and listening and listening. And so it kind of was awesome to just let all of those things kind of like bloom.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, like we have a song on the record that is maybe almost over 3 years old. It's the last one, Merge. And I've heard like a billion different renditions of that song. We played a billion different renditions of it live. And it wasn't until the last stages where I was like, no, all these sounds in my head, I want to lay them down here because this is what I've been hearing this whole time. I just didn't have the skill set to be able to take what I'm hearing in my head and make that with my hands.
Yeah.
Took that 3-year period to finally build those skills, to finally like, oh, my brain is now connecting to my hands, these tactile things that I can now make these sounds. And so a lot, not only just Merge, a lot of the rest of the remaining tracks on the record are products of that. So,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting though. And I always admire that is being able to bring a sound, a thought, an emotion to life, you know? And, you know, with you guys, how you write and how you do this process, do you guys put down the music first, or you are someone who writes first and then you kind of figure out like what would sound good with this later?
It's 100% the instrumental comes first, and then just finding I'll even like record like a demo track that I won't show anybody, not even Danny, of just like gibberish. And I try to find the words that will fit that gibberish, because it's kind of, I don't know if you've heard like in jazz where like people scat, you know, they just say random words. So it's just like I just like write and record those ideas really, really fast, and it's just absolute nonsense. And then after, I'll go back, I'll loop the song over and over again, and I'll find the words to try to decode some type of meaning, you know. I just kind of have like what is it, like when archaeologists like find a rock and they have to like dust it off?
Oh, yeah.
I know what
you're talking about. I can't think of the name, though.
Yeah, I'm trying to essentially just dust it off and find lyrics underneath all that mess.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. And for the two of you, I mean, I'm sure you've answered this question so many times, but, you know, where did you both start within music?
Go first. I don't remember what I did.
Well, I've always had an interest in music. My dad always tells stories about how like my mom has an irregular heartbeat, and I would always like, I guess in her womb, I would always like repeat the heartbeat back through her stomach. And he's just like, I always knew you were going to do something in music, specifically in drums, because I would like play the rhythm back to him when he was listening. But I think my first instrument was actually an accordion that he bought because he thought that I would like it for some reason. And he bought that like at a flea market that we went to every Sunday here in San Antonio. And I had zero interest in that. I don't care for the instrument at all.
An accordion. Yeah, it's so random.
Yeah.
The next record is all accordion.
Yeah.
Yeah, just accordion instrumentals.
Polka record, yeah. But yeah, I never had an interest. So like a week later, I I guess not really having the vocabulary to tell him like, hey, I don't really like this thing you bought me. I just started to bring out like the pots and pans in my parents' kitchen and just started playing on them as if they were drums. And then they figured like, okay, this kid wants a drum set. So I didn't officially get my drum. That was like around age 3. I didn't officially get my drum set until like age 7, because it's just so expensive. So I would say like I officially started playing music at 7.
Sweet. And then Danny, do you remember any of it? I love how Thomie went way back too. He was like in the womb.
Yeah. I don't think I remember that part, but no, I just remember as a little kid, my dad always had. Well, my dad was always like a striving classical guitar player. My dad and my grandpa, so they had like the old like Spanish nylon string guitars, and like that's the stuff that they would play. Not very good. If my dad ever sees this, he's gonna be really mad that I just said that, but. He taught me like the basics on like a guitar that my grandpa got me on my 8th birthday, and it was like a $50 guitar from like Walmart. So that morning of my 8th birthday, my grandpa went to Walmart, got me the guitar. I started picking it up, and then I think 2 or 3 years later, my grandpa went to, when I was living in Houston, there was a store called H&H Music, and he bought me this like really cheap electric guitar. And then my dad got so mad because he was like, this kid is going to go off the rails. He's going to be like into metal. He's going to start like wearing makeup and like whatever. So I started playing electric guitar a little more, and guitar was my only instrument pretty much. And then eventually at the end of high school is whenever I joined my first band, which is where I met Thomie.
Yeah, I was going to ask too. Yeah, that was like another question, was like how you guys met. Because I had, again, read something that you guys had been working together almost since like 2010, correct?
Yeah.
So you guys met, like, I guess kind of explain that story and how it became, because you guys started with Parallel Elephants. Like that was the original like group that you guys had before you went solo, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's still like the same project. It's just like a changed name, but like same people are involved in this one as Parallel Elephants. It's the same exact formatting for the band. We just changed the name just because it's easier to spell.
Yeah. For sure. But yeah, so how did you guys meet and get to the point where you're at now of being collaborators?
Met in high school. I think I was a sophomore, right?
Yeah, I think you were a sophomore.
So
I was a junior.
Yeah, he's a year ahead of me. So we met through a mutual friend who was also in the band at the time. He was a bass player. And then just, being in high school, everyone's in a band for like 2 weeks, and then they kind of move on to another band or, get serious about their life because their parents tell them to. And there's like always a few scragglers that are really serious about music and like actually want to do it. And, through that, we just met through mutual friends in high school and then just started playing music in like a bunch of pop punk bands that aren't around anymore.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, that's really interesting. And it's so cool to see where you guys are at now because, the growth, especially of like a lot of bands, is you see where they start and what they released and what they're doing now and how personal it is to them. So kind of going back around to, growing up, the album art is you when you were younger. So how did you come to find like the aesthetic of the album, whether that was the title Stroll Along or the album art itself?
Yeah, I was just literally digging through my mom's, like, she has like a giant, like, clear tub of photos that are like just completely like torn up and there's no reason to keep them. But I was like, maybe I could find something cool in here, just not really thinking with the intention of finding an album art. And I was just curious and I opened it up maybe about a year ago. And then I found that picture like at the very bottom. I was like, it just like immediately was like, oh, this has to be it. It just, and on the side of it, it was a Christmas photo. So on the side of it, at the very right corner, there's like a toy that they had gotten my sister that Christmas, and it says Stroll Along on it. So I was just like, this is just kind of just working itself out. Yeah,
I was literally going to ask that because when I was looking at the album and like the art itself, I saw that it was there and I didn't know if it was something that you photoshopped in or if it was a legit like toy or object in the picture. So that's really cool.
That's exactly what I wanted people to think.
Yeah. Yeah, because I looked at it and I was like, is this an edit or like is this something that he just had? So that's really interesting. And do you guys have any favorite tracks off the album or ones that you really focused on throughout all of this?
That's hard.
I want to say Automatic and Changes because those are like the last two we really like finished up. But you know, I'm always biased to the most recent tracks. Like whatever is the last thing we released or worked on, that's my favorite thing. That's just like how I work.
Yeah, especially because it wraps up the project before you release it.
Yeah.
I really like Automatic a lot. That one was a toughie. That I remember the day that one has a story to it, so we had to turn in the album, and I think I had like no, it was the next day, right? That we had to give it to Terrible, and so Automatic was done being tracked, so all the recorded parts were finished, but we had not mixed it or mastered it, and we had to turn it in 24 hours. So the day before I woke up and I spent pretty much 17 hours like pushing out mixes and sending it to Thomie and being like, what do you think? What do you think? And it took us the whole day, and I would be like on the fourth rendition, and then he would be like, nope, like that's not it. We go back, fix this. This ain't it. And it wasn't until like 11:30, almost midnight, when I finally did the card test to check that it was the final version, and then he was
gosh,
yeah, that was super tiring.
Yeah, grueling process for sure. So now that the album is out, and obviously I take that in and everything, what can we expect from you guys next? Because I know right now, like I've asked so many artists that, especially with the college radio that we had this past like month, and with what we're going through in the pandemic, it's hard as artists, and a lot of them had so many different answers. So with you guys, like, what are your next steps? Are you just immediately going back to working on music or talking about doing some kind of show?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier, like as an artist in this time, I feel like you constantly have to pivot and our plans keep changing. Like for example, the way the record was supposed to come out was totally how it happened. But, things happen how they're supposed to, I think. But ultimately, what I'd like to do is get into some type of live stream thing because we can't tour obviously right now for a while for the foreseeable future. So I like to do some type of live stream series or maybe like a one-off thing. And as far as recording, like, yeah, we're jumping like right back into recording the next project today, actually.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's good to hear.
I think we have like I have a whole notes in my phone that I think we can pretty much almost have enough material to build almost a second record.
Yeah.
Not completed tracks, but they're like initial baby ideas. That once we jump on them and pick up and run with it,
yeah, dude, that's awesome. That's awesome that you guys are just getting right back into it too, because I'm so excited to hear the next project as well. But with what you guys have released so far, it's fantastic. I love Supply, and I remember coming into your music, when you and Catherine got together, and I was just like, oh, his stuff is so good. So to see how you've grown from then till now, and to see the product that you guys just produced is great, and I've loved it, and I still love listening to it. So yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you guys coming on today and talking, and
awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, you guys are welcome. All right, enjoy your day.
You too. Bye.
Yeah.